Thank you very much, Councillor. No doubt Deputy Healy and many others of his cohorts would have preferred an immediate default when this government assumed office. Such a default would have entailed an immediate €18 billion reduction in the deficit, because that's what the deficit was when this government assumed office. So to reduce that deficit by the required €18 billion would have had to be made up of a reduction in spending on social welfare, education, health, the big-ticket items, combined with an increase in taxation, in property taxes, income taxes, universal social charges. Now, I've no doubt that Deputy Healy would be the first to oppose any reduction in spending on health, on education, on social welfare, or on any of the areas in which this government spends money. Likewise, I have no doubt that Deputy Healy would be the first up to oppose any increase in income tax, any increase in the universal social charge, any increase in any other charge, including household charges. And I note that he's a notable member of the anti-household charge brigade, the anti-property tax brigade. In fact, I heard him last night and many other of his cohorts campaigning and speaking against the introduction of employers' contribution to sick pay. So where is that €18 billion to be found, I ask, if not through cooperation with the programme which this government inherited? Now, that programme is flawed in many regards. It has been described as a central element of it is puncta sunt servanda, or agreements will be followed, no matter how immoral those agreements are, regardless of whether the €64 billion that have been basically taken off the back of the Irish taxpayers and put into our banks, regardless of whose debt that is, that debt has to be paid by Irish citizens. Do I agree with that? No. Do I think it's moral? No. Do I see any alternative for this government at this time, and indeed at the time that it took power? Well, unfortunately, I do not. That does, as I say, require renegotiation, and those negotiations are ongoing. Those negotiations are at an advanced level, as we all saw last week when Angela Merkel said on Friday night, and caused quite a bit of confusion, when she said that there would be no retrospective recapitalisation of the banks. Now, it's quite clear to me that Angela Merkel's first instinct is to protect German bankers at the expense of Irish citizens, and indeed citizens of Spain and citizens of peripheral countries right across Europe. So that is very much Frankfurt's way. But there is an alternative in Europe. We've seen François Hollande, the new socialist president of France, sign up to a growth agenda and a debt reduction, a debt restructuring agenda, which is very much the way of socialists across Europe. Now, there will be elections next year in Germany and in Italy, which will very much determine the future of Europe. And as I said, we are not, at the moment, we are not free to act on our own, unless, of course, we are to slash government spending in a way which would entail huge pain for ordinary people. But nor do I think that we should be just passive, or do I advocate being mere passive bystanders in those elections. We have to reduce our deficit, number one, because it's a condition of the programme we're in. But number two, for those who advocate a default, any serious economist who advocates a default will first say that you cannot default until your deficit is down to zero. Yes, we have to contemplate a default, but in order to be able to even contemplate a default when this programme ends, and I would far rather see a default than enter into another programme which was on the same terms as this one. But in order to be in that position, we have to reduce our deficit. There is no alternative to a deficit-reducing budget at this time. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very